remembering Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Well, today, Sean, we honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., who dedicated his life's work to the advancement of racial equality and justice. And, while many on the left have baselessly called President Trump a racist, Dr. King's niece, Alveda King, on numerous occasions, Sean, has spoken about Trump's commitment for the same principles. Take a listen.
They asked this man when he was a candidate, what are you going to do about race and racism? He said, we're Americans. We all bleed the same. We need for people to be safe, secure, blessed, working if they need to. And so I just want to say thank you. You keep your promises, so keep going, sir.
Resounding applause there, Sean. Joining us to talk about how Trump's policies have helped minority communities is Trump 2020 campaign senior advisor Jason Miller and CEO of the National Diversity Coalition for Trump and the author of Nothing to Lose, Pastor Darrell Scott. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Thank you. Good evening.
All right, well, Pastor Scott, I'm going to start with you. What would you say was the top thing that Trump did to help advance causes for the African-American community?
Sure, there was just so much. President Trump was the first president that I'm aware of, once again, that was proactive, not reactive to the needs of the African-American community. And I had the privilege of working very closely with him in regards to urban policies. And there was absolutely nothing that we presented to him that he turned down. I mean, we have an entire litany of accomplishments and initiatives that he engaged in: criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones. Those are just to name a few. He did historic levels of funding for HBCUs. There's just so much that he did that the effects, the repercussions, will be felt generationally in the African-American community because of the things that he's done. Just the funding for the HBCUs alone will empower and enable an entire generation of Black college students to get an education. Then we're talking about, once again, criminal justice reform, prison reform, the opportunity zones. These were all things that he did, not reactively, but proactively to benefit the African-American community.
I like how you say that, proactively. Jason, what would you say?
Yeah, I think Pastor Scott hit a lot of these points. And one of the other interesting things is I think so often in politics, and not just with Republicans, but Democrats also, when they speak to the African-American community, it's very much in what, look, it's a little bit of white-splaining. Here's what, as white leaders, we think that African-Americans would be interested in hearing. But here's the thing that set President Trump apart. He would talk about issues that weren't on anybody's radar screen. So, for example, when we talk about ending the endless wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, who does that impact the most? It disproportionately impacts whether it be folks in the African-American community that come from poor backgrounds or white community, rural areas that come from poor backgrounds. And so this is an issue that no other politician, Republican or Democrat, would ever dive into. But when President Trump would pick issues like this, and part of the reason I bring this up is when we were talking about the president's second-term agenda and we pulled it back over the summer, ending endless wars was far and away the number one issue for the president's second term that African-American voters were into. And I thought that was fascinating.
Pastor Scott, Trump often gets branded as a racist by the left and many folks in the media. But interestingly, I mean, you just listed all of these things that he has done. Do you think that when you talk to folks in the African-American community that you work with, that it is appreciated and recognized, or is it they don't buy it? I mean, it's interesting because he did all of those things, and the question is it recognized, and does that change the image of him?
It is recognized. He had, we did historic low levels of unemployment for African-Americans. And the thing is, every 4 years, the Republican Party would come along and try to play the game of pin the racist on the Republican. And the fact that they couldn't keep that issue in front of President Trump and he would continue to try to explain and defend and defend and explain and explain and defend. If someone asked me, if someone accused me and said, you don't like white people, I put myself in this situation. I said, if they asked me, was I racist against white people, how would I react? How would I respond? I would deny it, and then I would move on. And I would actually get irritated if it kept coming back up. And then he set out to prove his skeptics wrong or his critics wrong through the actions that he engaged in. And as a result, it showed up in the polls. He got voting numbers from the African-American community, especially here in 2020, that no other Republican candidate has seen in a generation. I mean, I think it was 24% of African-American men supported him and 18% of African-Americans overall. So,
yeah.
you know, they're not going for that.
You know, Pastor Scott, you mentioned those numbers, but Jason, you know, a lot of Republicans and operatives dismissed Trump's effort to reach out to the black voter, saying that it wouldn't pay off in the end. You know, do you think that how is this going to affect down ballot Republican candidates in the future?
Well, and this is an important reason why President Trump needs to remain the leader of the Republican Party, why we have to have him stay plugged in, because right now, these voters that voted for President Trump, they're connected with the president. It's not a complete shift over to the Republican Party. And I'm going to tell you why. I think because when we talk about the issues that are important, President Trump as an individual gave so many black voters hope. Not when I say hope, not like in the bumper sticker, the slogan way, as we've seen from previous presidents, but the feeling that, you know what, no matter what society tells me, no matter what the media tells me, no matter what anyone discriminatory might tell me, I know what I can achieve. I know what I can do for myself. Look at how President Trump sticks it to them, and he doesn't let them keep him down. So many folks I talk to in the black community say, you know what, I like that. He doesn't care. These idiots try to tell him, go play in your lane. You're not allowed to go and do this. And Trump says, you know what, I'm going to stand up and fight. And people like that. That's why. So right now, it's attached specifically to the president. We need to do it overall with Republicans, but I think we need another term of President Trump, maybe starting after 2024, to come back and let's grow those numbers even higher.
Exactly. Pastor Scott, I just have a few seconds left, but I want to, Martin Luther King had this really great saying. He said, I have a dream that my little children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And it seems like today people want to focus more on the color than the character now. How do we solve that and get back to what he was talking about?
Well, once again, when you say people, Sean, I take you to task a little bit and say the Democrats. That's the Democratic Party line. Immediately after the doggone Capitol riots, Joe and Kamala played the race card. Oh, if they were black, this would have been different if they were black. They're playing that race card, but that race card is getting about as worn out as a deck of cards in the penitentiary because people are seeing through that nonsense. And, we do want to be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. And that's for every person. And so we're going to get past this racial narrative. The Democrat Party has demonstrated that they are the party of race and racism, not the Republican Party. And the messaging, if the messaging is a little more clear, as Jason brought out, I think we can get past that.
I hope we do. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here with us on this day as we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Hope to have you back soon. All right, Sean and I will be right back. Don't go away.